government usually brings in a set of rules and guidelines at a particular point, and there's usually a period of time in which everyone's given a bit of leeway. After that point, they start cracking down and making things far more pressured to do things correctly. Where are we at the moment?
So again, it depends on which industry you're in. If you're in a critical infrastructure, one that's covered by the Security Critical Infrastructure Act, that window for leniency has finished, actually. So they announced the laws. They gave people a year to get up to speed and have your critical risk management plan in place, your cybersecurity risk management plan. And that was supposed to be in place by August last year. So if you're in one of the SOCI industry areas, you really need to get your skates on to catch up, because there are consequences for not having done the minimum things required under the Act. In other areas, if you're a financial services license holder, so like an accounting firm, financial advisors, then APRA has standards that you're required to meet. There's no grace period for those. You're required to meet those right now. Corporations Act is the same. If you're a director for a company, you are expected to have taken what we call reasonable steps to protect the cybersecurity of your company, and that's in place right now. So there's no grace periods going on. We're not already doing something about it. It's time to get our heads out of the sand and take action, because the government is in the space where they're expecting business to have put in place these requirements.
Yeah, I imagine that in the future, months and years from now, it's going to be even stricter as it sort of all of these rules filter down to other businesses which aren't currently affected so much.
Yeah. And they're talking a lot about security of your supply chain. So even if your business is quite secure, you are part of a supply chain. You've got all the suppliers to your business. You know, people might be people who provide you with services like cleaning, or if you've got office plants, or reception services. You might have people who provide you with products. So my uncle runs a pool company, and he's got lots of pool chemical suppliers. So he has got relationships with all of those. If one of them has a breach and the information about his company is stolen, then that is the same as him having a breach of his company, because it's a supply chain attack. So it's not enough just to think about your personal security. You also have to be thinking about that broader supply chain that you're part of, and asking your suppliers what they're doing about being secure, because it impacts you just as much.
You mentioned latest breaches, not mentioning any big companies, but we've seen big companies be breached. Will we see that again, and will the ramifications for those big companies be different in the near future and longer future because of what you're talking about in terms of legislative changes?
Yeah. So when we talk about what does a business have to do and what's reasonable, it's based on the resources available to that company. So if the big companies get breached and they haven't done the basics, then the regulators are going to come down on them a lot harder than they would on the smaller companies who have fewer resources, right? And the big companies are also on notice. They know what's happened to the big companies who have been breached over the last couple of years, and they're facing regulator investigations and they're facing class action lawsuits. And that's what's in store for any of the big companies that do have a breach. And it's not just the cost of recovering from the breach, it's a long tail of consequences of lawsuits, and also fixing your IT operations and restoring your brand and trust in the community. That's where the biggest damage is to every business, big or small, when you have a cyber attack.
If you're the CEO of that business, you may just lose your job as well.